But we begin, as I mentioned, in the NBA last night. Arguably one of the best games we've seen from Donovan Mitchell over the course of his career, and last night was a big night to come through. 43 points, including a 39-point second half for Mitchell. 112-102. The Cavs do beat the Pistons as 3.5-point favorites. They end up winning by 10. So now the Cavs are 6-0 this at home in the playoffs, and 0-5 on the road. It's been exactly that, a tale of two different locations and two different results for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And certainly Mitchell isn't going to try to fix anything on his historic second half. Here he was post-game.
Airball the first layup, this is shot short. Sometimes it's natural, right? But to James's point, not really trying to force it. I didn't really, do got in the paint, tried to find guys, right? Like wasn't really trying to get in there and force it. And then just doubling down on the defensive end, trying to, take whoever I'm guarding, take them out of the equation. I understand that I'm going to get looks and it's going to fall at some point, even if they didn't, right? Just being aggressive, more aggressive. But I'm not sure we were down 4 at half, like, you know what I mean? So understanding that, I always tell you, it's not just about the scoring. It's about your overall impact on the game. And for me, it was just like, okay, now I have an opportunity to try to get downhill and start going in.
It's unacceptable. It is. We didn't do enough, obviously, to help ourselves, and I'll start there. But ever since we came to Cleveland, the whistle has changed. There's no way that one guy on their team shoots more free throws than our team. We're not a settle team. We're not a jump shooting team. We drive the ball, attack the paint. So what was done out there tonight, it's frustrating. But we can't allow that to be the reason why, because we didn't play well enough and play to the best of our capabilities. But again, you look at the foul count, you look at the disparity, and that's hard to overcome. And you wonder, the reason why. It's interesting, since Kenny made his comments publicly about, us, the whistle's changed in this series.
And JB Bickerstaff looking for a win next game, says, help us out, refs, a little bit. That's all that's about right there. Okay, well, the odds maker certainly did know something last night. We questioned it yesterday here on the show, and there was a reason. The Lakers did cover last night, but they got swept by the Oklahoma City Thunder. That was the final. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in a 115-110 victory for OKC. Also, Mitchell had 28, Chet Holmgren had 19 and 9. But the bigger story percolating out of this is whether or not last night's game was the final one for LeBron James. So we simply don't know at this point. So let's first hear from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on his 35-point performance, and LeBron weighs in on his future.
We've done our job so far. That's all it really means. We've gone out there, we've executed, we played at a high level, and we've been able to win 8 tough games against really good opponents. That's all it really means. And nothing's guaranteed, but in the playoffs, no 2 games are the same, especially when you change opponents. So the challenges are all coming up, I guess you can say. Everything that we've done so far is behind us. We still haven't reached our goal. We have 2 more series to win to reach our ultimate goal. That's what we're focused on.
Well, I think you guys asked me about it, and I've answered questions. Yeah, I don't think I've come out as like, oh, retirement is coming. With my future, I don't know, obviously. This is obviously we're still fresh from, obviously losing, and I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for me, obviously, as it stands right now tonight. I got a lot of time. I'll sit back, like I think I said it last year after we lost, I think, to Minnesota, to go back and recalibrate with my family and talk with them and spend some time with them. And then when the time comes, I obviously, you guys know what I decide to do.
All right, we'll see what LeBron ends up doing. More on him a little bit later in the show. By the way, tonight it's Game 5 between the Timberwolves and Spurs. We have a preview coming up a little bit later in the show as well. Okay, over to some Major League Baseball. Hottest team in the American League remains the Tampa Bay Rays. They win on the road again, 15th out of their last 17th. This is a road trip of success thus far for Tampa Bay before they head home this weekend. Drew Rasmussen picked up the win. He's been great. 6 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts. Also, Kevin Gausman reached 2,000 career strikeouts. He's one of 6 active players, but they ended up losing the game regardless. Chandler Simpson had 3 hits, but maybe had a cramp in that game as well. Yankees going through it for the first time this season. They've now lost 4 games in a row. Orioles beat the Yankees 3-2 and come back and win. Ryan Weathers had a no-hitter into the 7th inning, but in the 7th, it was Colby Mayo who hit a 3-run home run to give the Orioles a lead for good. Here's manager Craig Albernaz on that big shot.
Colby works hard. He cares a lot, and for him to come through right there was huge. For him, for us, it's a late scratch ambush for him, but all of our guys, but to his credit, prepared. He was ready, prepared, and that's a tough matchup. That lefty, he has some reverse split numbers. The slider's real. It's a real tough matchup. He did a great job of getting that slider up and then putting a good swing on it.
As we mentioned yesterday, when the Giants and Dodgers match up, you could kind of throw away the records. This is an intense rivalry. How about this Trevor McDonald, who's joined the rotation for the Giants? He helps in the win 9-3. San Francisco picks up the victory. Maybe the bigger story for the Giants, though, is the fact that Rafael Devers has now homered 3 times this week, 2 for 3, and seems to be getting back on track. Here's manager Tony Vitello on the offense, which was much needed.
And then the other thing about the at-bats offensively, it seemed to be a lot of guys grinding out at-bats, even prior to that last inning, grinding out at-bats and trying to find whatever way to get a job done. Even when it wasn't successful, you could see the intent, like Jung Hoo's ground ball to first base was sharply hit. It was just right at a good first baseman. Overall, the at-bats were really good, and Rafi kind of led the way.
Been a tough start for Vitello. Tough couple days, by the way, for the manager of the Cleveland Guardians. Steven Vogt has missed the last 2 days with a viral infection, so they've got a fill-in. Their bench coach and acting manager, Tony Arnerick. He got his first win, filling in for Vogt. It was Joey Cantillo who threw 6 innings and picked up the victory. Also, Travis Bazzana, the young rookie, got a win as well. Here's Arnerick on getting his first win as manager.
First career win and beer shower to boot. What did that moment mean for you?
It's pretty cool. You think about growing up playing in the big leagues, and I guess it's the next best thing is if you can coach in the big leagues and just have the opportunity to manage. Obviously, Voter being sick isn't ideal, but at the end of the day, the players go play, and you sit there and you watch the game, and there's some decisions to be made, but to be able to do that is cool for me and my family, and we're a big baseball family, and my grandpa, growing up, always told me about Joe Sewell, who's a Cleveland legend, and how much he didn't strike out, and he would remind us how much big leaguers strike out now. So, you get brought up in this game, and I'd like to think my family, my dad, and my grandpa taught me about the history of the game. So to be able to, have a night in the dugout where I'm the manager and get a W, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Hopefully Vogt will be okay moving forward. Meanwhile, the Colorado Avalanche go to Minnesota and take a commanding lead in their best of 7. They beat the Wild 3-1. The Canadiens will play the Sabres, and they lead 2-1 in the series. And the Golden Knights and Ducks square off in Game 5 tonight at 9:30 Eastern. Welcome back to Newswire here on SportsGrid. Dustin Gouker is with us. He's got a great podcast and also the Closing Line, where he writes about everything prediction markets and such. And great to have Dustin back here on the show. Dustin, thanks for coming on the program here. So, this is actually a learning tool for me, because I didn't know that DraftKings didn't have their own proprietary, I guess, operation as far as their prediction market business is concerned. I simply thought when they launched their app and they launched their prediction markets as they were doing their own thing. So my understanding, learning from you here, is that they've been using markets offered by other exchanges. So tell me why that happened and why they've decided to use their own exchange, because simply put, wouldn't it cost them more money to use this information?
There's a lot behind this. Yeah, we just had DraftKings, and also we'll talk about FanDuel, I think, do their Q1 earnings call. And we learned a lot about their prediction markets business. Of course, they've both in the last couple months have launched prediction markets themselves that are separate from their sports books. But Yeah, DraftKings has been using a combination of CME Group, which is a traditional commodities exchange. It also has a prediction market operation. It also has worked with Crypto.com to surface markets. So when you look at DraftKings and the prediction markets product, you're actually looking at those markets. It's being presented through DraftKings, but it's not. So now last year they have bought something called Railbird, which allows them to offer their own exchange, not kind of like exactly like Kalshi does or Polymarket does, where they own the exchange and they can offer their own markets and control the whole thing themselves. Yes, that costs them money to do that, but it gives them way more control of the plumbing and how all of this works. It actually increases the amount of revenue they should be able to generate from all of this. Right now, they are a pass-through for other markets. And they're just making a little bit of money. Now they're going to be able to generate more money in terms of fees and trading. So this should be a net positive for DraftKings when they get all of this. And I think the goal for them they're going to be live here, they said, before the end of the quarter, I believe, and certainly before football season.
Okay, let's now move over to FanDuel. I noticed their CEO was let go, Dustin, and certainly it's hard to make progress as a company when no other sports betting states are legalizing sports betting, and you're having to, sort of go up against prediction markets as well. Maybe that has actually nothing to do with it. I'll lean on you for this. Why did FanDuel make that change?
Yeah, we had Amy Howe leave as CEO of the FanDuel business. FanDuel is a part of the larger gambling company called Flutter that's based in Europe, but FanDuel is a big part of what that is. And FanDuel's had some challenging results, and things have changed, obviously, with prediction markets. I think there's probably a desire to push the envelope a little more than FanDuel has so far in all of this. And FanDuel right now, I'd say, is probably trailing DraftKings as the sports books and other entities look to get into prediction markets and really scale that business. Because we listen to Q1 earnings for both companies, and it's pretty clear. I think DraftKings is ahead of FanDuel right now. So this is it's some of the challenging results on sports. It's some of I think looking to the future of what FanDuel will be in its sports brands and prediction markets. So, but FanDuel, just like DraftKings, is going to deploy a lot of capital into all of this. Both of them are forecasting a lot of spend heading into football season to scale that prediction markets product. So, it's going to be all hands on deck. We're going to see this giant marketing push, I think, in the late summer, early fall, as the NFL and college football get started.
Yep, a few months for that. Also, World Cup coming up in June. I would suspect a lot of folks going to be wagering on that. All right, prediction markets now. Let's get specifically to Kalshi here. Record numbers for them in March at $13 billion. What were the numbers in April?
Yeah, it grew again up to $14.8 billion in total trading volume. Again, I caution people that's not the exact same thing as sports betting handle that we talk about in the state-regulated sports books, but it's a meaningful number that captures how much people are trading. You and I, if we were going onto an app and trade, but also the market makers on the other side of this. So big number. When we were starting football season, we're talking like $3 to $4 billion a month, and now even with football season over and kind of the sports calendar turning to spring and summer, when it's obviously slower in terms of how much you can bet on. Obviously, we have playoffs in hockey and basketball, but there's just fewer games going on. So, this is it's an impressive number for sure. The part of this though is the parlay product is growing. That difference that you heard, almost $2 billion between March and April, most of that is coming from parlays and how Kalshi is scaling that parlay product and how much people are able to get down on parlays. Again, that's it's a little inflated because if you or I goes on Kalshi and trades $1 to win $99, that's getting captured as $100 of trading volume. But still, this points to the idea that this is growing and that the sportsbook product, which it's growing because of same game parlays. That's what we've seen over the life cycle of sports betting here in the United States. And now we're seeing that really take off in prediction markets. So it's fascinating to see, and we'll see how much bigger it gets here, again, in football season when parlays are, again, the big thing. And, baseball right now too, like it's a popular way to bet on baseball.
Yeah. Now, I did see a social media post from Kalshi today regarding the hantavirus. It's funny that I saw that, and now we're talking about it here on this show. Now, for those unfamiliar, Dustin, this virus, I guess, came to fruition on a cruise of some kind. And naturally, since the pandemic, everyone is always looking for that next pandemic. I don't know that this is even a natural thought to have as a human being, but we're all very well aware of it. I'm guessing had the pandemic not happened, this would probably be much ado about nothing. But naturally, in the prediction market space, this is something that you can attack if you like.
Yeah, we want to talk about disease. That's what we're here for, right? Right, Craig? Anyway, it is fascinating. It's both a good and bad part of prediction markets. Like, we're betting on whether there's going to be a pandemic or trading on it. That's not great. But at the same time, we're getting data about what a market thinks about there being a public health emergency. Will the World Health Organization declare an emergency before the end of the year? That's actually pretty interesting data. We're not betting on people dying or getting hantavirus, but we're learning something about the world and what's going on. So it's I think it's one of those things there's some bad and some good with the prediction market here, but again, us being able to price whether we're going to have a pandemic. Yes, right now it's a 13% chance. Kalshi has been about $500,000 traded on that market, and I think it's interesting data.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, let's end with some NBA here. Oklahoma City on Kalshi. You can take a shot here and make a prediction as to whether or not they go unbeaten in the playoffs. And by the way, I mean, Dustin, not a crazy thought based on the way that they have played thus far.
Yeah, I mean, close one last night, but they still won. For them to go 16-0 in the playoffs, so they have to win the next two series by sweeps. About 7.8% chance of that happening.
Yeah, you would think that at some point somebody would take them down for a game, but you never know. Dustin, as always, very informative stuff. We'll talk again soon. Thanks again.